Narcissist. 50 Things to Know About a Narcissistic Personality Disorder. Written by Albert Rogers. Narrated by Matthias Job Gombusch. Introduction. Narcissism can be something in you or a friend's, acquaintances, or family member's personality, whether dominant or slightly present, and perhaps you didn't notice it or didn't know what to do with it. That time is over now. This guide will take you through the 50 most important things you need to know about the disorder, or tendencies to it, some strategies to cope with, and the best solutions or treatments, signs, symptoms, and the mindset of dealing with those who have it. I didn't make all of these things up. They have been scientifically proven, tested, studied, and observed. I promise you that you won't regret reading this book. Even glancing over every symptom or fact will give you a basic knowledge of narcissism, and will help you recognize it at an earlier stage. So, what are you waiting for? Go on and begin at the first fact. One. Definition. First of all, we need to understand what a narcissistic personality disorder is. Anyone can have a narcissistic tendencies or traits, but the definition of such a disorder lies in the fact that people who have it have an inflated sense of their own significance, a deep need for admiration, and a lack of empathy for others. They typically wear a mask of extreme confidence, but underneath it, there is a fragile, low self-esteem, which is highly vulnerable to criticism and the opinion of others. 2. Self-esteem. Narcissists don't have a real self-esteem, but they fool themselves and the rest of the world all day long if they have to. They conceal their insecurity very well, and a lot of the time, this is easy for them, because they have been trained by circumstances to survive doing this. It can be subtle, but every once in a while, you'll see a glimpse of low self-esteem and a fear of failure in them. Don't confront them, however, because they will never admit to weakness. 3. Machiavellianism. One of the traits related to narcissism is Machiavellianism. The definition of Machiavellianism is being so focused on your own interests that you go as far as manipulating, deceiving, or exploiting others to achieve your own goals. Machiavellianism, along with narcissism and psychopathy, forms what is called the dark triad. In modern psychology, these three form the basis of what is considered an evil villain: cynical disregard for morality, and a sole focus on personal gain. Machiavellians are described as cunning, lacking a moral code, and sneaky ways to circumvent ethics to arrive at their desired destination, without any regard for others' happiness. The end justifies the means is a phrase often heard by such people, although not all or most narcissists possess this trait. Some do, and extra care should be taken when interacting with these individuals. 4. Signs of a narcissistic personality. Here are the most common signs that you are dealing with someone who has narcissistic tendencies. 1. An insatiable appetite for attention from others. 2. Extreme feelings of jealousy. 3. They behave as if they deserve special treatment. 4. They brag or exaggerate their achievements, importance, and talents. 5. Does narcissism equal borderline personality disorder? Although there are similarities to be found, like manipulative behavior, a lack of empathy, and a feeling of emptiness emanating from the fear of abandonment that often started in their childhood, narcissism and displeasure of knowing two different people, one with the one disorder and the other with the other. And although they share a similar lack of self-esteem, a need for attention and emotional influence tricks, whether purposely or unintentionally, they were in no way the same. Personally, my family and I had a lot more problems with the woman who had borderline personality disorder than the person who was narcissistic. Of course, there were other problems involved, but this is my experience. You could say, however, that narcissism is a hallmark and one of the traits of borderline personality disorder. Others have stated that narcissism is a less extreme version of borderline personality disorder, although this statement could be argued. For a book about borderline personality disorder, check out this one, Borderline Disorder: 50 Solutions for Surviving Someone with Borderline Personality Disorder. 6. Other possible signs. Narcissism can involve other signs as well. Some of these may be more prevalent than others, but they can all accompany the disorder. Such signs could include arrogance, selfishness, manipulative tendencies, motives to gain power, a love of mirrors, vanity. Many narcissists thoroughly believe they are more unique or special than others. This is usually accompanied by a strong sense of entitlement and a lack of empathy. A lack of empathy means he or she is unwilling, or in most cases, unable to recognize or identify with the feelings and needs of others. In this sense, you cannot blame a narcissist for some of their behavior. They simply don't understand what another person is going through in the same way. 7. Prevalence. What percentage of people have narcissistic personality disorder? According to the biggest study that have been done on personality disorders by the American National Institutes of Health, about 5.9% of the population in the United States has borderline disorder. 6.2% has narcissistic personality disorder. 10% of U.S. residents have both. This gives us an idea of how frequent we can encounter an individual who has any of the two personality disorders, and it can help us adjust our expectations when interacting with new people we come in contact with. Therefore, negating overly suspicious thoughts and demolishing naive false beliefs in regards thereof. 8. Grandiose narcissism. The difference between regular narcissists and grandiose narcissists is that the latter are usually more assertive, dominant, and overbearing when it comes to interpersonal relationships and contacts. Their flamboyant, charismatic style can cause them to stand more of a chance to attain leadership positions, generate a huge following, and since they have an even more inflated sense of self, they can make quick, rash, overconfident decisions and refuse to learn from their mistakes. People that are leaning more towards this and get into influential leadership positions can do a lot of damage. 9. Gender and age. According to the statistics of several surveys and elaborate research testing, men score slightly higher than women when it comes to a lack of empathy. This can be related to the more competitive and hard nature of men in a general sense, although such conclusions are not necessarily grounded on any evidence. The men in the research also scored higher when it came to a sense of entitlement, 82.6% as opposed to 77.1%, and when it came to interpersonal exploitative tendencies, 65.5% versus 55.7%. Women have, according to this survey, more tendencies to envy others and having a firm belief that others envy them. Women also scored slightly higher than men on having an arrogant attitude or demeanor. Young adults in this survey were more prone to being preoccupied with fantasies of ideal love or unlimited success or power. 78.2% versus 49.8%, than older adults, and they scored higher on interpersonal exploitativeness. But older adults seem to have a stronger sense of entitlement. 10. Narcissism versus narcissism. When speaking of a narcissist with a capital N, one usually refers to someone within the 1 to 3% that has an established clinical disorder. Most of those people don't even know they have a problem. Other narcissists, with a lowercase n, are just those who are on a lower side of the spectrum, with robust egos, lots of charm, or similar signs and traits. They can be manipulative, arrogant, or hard to deal with in some other ways, but they do not qualify for being classified as those who actually have a clinical disorder. 11. Comparison. You can tell the difference in the effects and expressions of narcissism when, for example, comparing two people who both had different results. John Edwards and Bill Clinton is an interesting comparison in regards to that. Kluger said about John Edwards, "There was just too much preening. There was just too much vanity. People, even when they liked him, felt a little skived by him as if they were somehow being sold a bill of goods." By contrast, "We knew Clinton was a charmer," Kluger said. "We knew that Clinton was seductive, but he was, and still is, so good at it that we just think, all right, seduce me. I don't care." Clinton's affliction is often called a mask model of narcissism, Kluger said. "Clinton's long game is to be loved by every one of the 7 billion people on the planet," he said. "It's narcissism that's a clever and often somewhat brittle masquerade to cover up what may be its exact opposite, a well of low self-esteem." 12. Being with narcissists can be like taking drugs. Those who fell in love with narcissists testified that it was like falling for a drug. Narcissists are often extremely charming and charismatic. They are the funniest, the most energetic, the most impressive, and the most interesting to listen to. They often show interest in others on a superficial level, get people around them involved, and make the whole room feel as if there is always a party going on. Narcissists are often good at impersonating someone who is genuine and who is socially engaged with those around them. They aren't just smart and fun, but it can trigger the release of dopamine when such a seemingly popular person shows a personal interest in you and seems to care. The attention you gain is addicting, and the narcissist is usually good at making others feel special, at least at first. Because they are so intelligent and sometimes even highly educated, many others won't see that there is a nut job inside of them. 13. Ask them. Ironically, a narcissist will often admit that he or she is a narcissist. If you ask a narcissist if he or she is one, you could get an answer like this: "Narcissist? Well, yeah, if you mean that I think highly of myself. Well, I am pretty confident indeed. I mean, look at what I've accomplished. You can't say that about everyone here. I deserve to have a high opinion of myself. There is nothing wrong with that." They don't beat around the bush that much. They may excuse or justify it, but they often will admit they are more important or special than others, and that they are the best person they know. 14. A small dose of narcissism. One could argue that every person needs a healthy dose of narcissism. People who don't think highly enough of themselves don't accomplish much more. Big leaders who achieved phenomenal and beneficial results always had a little bit of an ego. They were able to channel that confidence into a smart, unselfish purpose, depending on who you're talking about. But they were well aware of the fact that they were extraordinary, and that it was up to them to change the world. You could think of Martin Luther King Jr. or Mahatma Gandhi, for instance. They kept their ego within a box, and they didn't let it control them, but they were certainly motivated by a sweet taste of ego-boosting factors. And in a way, there is nothing wrong with that. The problem is when it gets out of hand, becomes excessive, or when someone uses it to achieve harmful results. 15. Bad parents. As a parent, you must often put your children's needs first. A sense of selflessness overcomes every parent who gets up in the middle of the night, gives attention to children when they want some time alone, or cleans up after them, spends money on them, or takes them to bed. This is one of the reasons parenting can be so rewarding. People think less of themselves and actually become more generous, tolerant people. Narcissists, however, cannot give what they don't have. If they didn't get enough attention in their childhood, if they are constantly trying to magnify their own ego, it will reflect on the attention they give to their children. The narcissist parent may try to draw attention from the children and have the children be impressed with them, instead of building up the self-confidence and motivation of their children to improve themselves. In a general sense, this makes narcissists bad parents. 16. Social media and narcissism. Although it is my personal opinion that social media enhances narcissism, with all the attention so many people are seeking online, there are also those who oppose this and claim that we, as a society, were already pretty narcissistic, and that social media is an utterance and an outlet for these feelings, not the other way around. What was first, the chicken or the egg? I am sure future studies will point out many other interesting facts about the relationship between Facebook addictions, YouTube celebrities, Twitter zombies, and narcissism. Whether or not selfies, likes, and subscribers fuel narcissism, if they are harmless in that sense, is still to be discovered. It can certainly raise a few eyebrows and cause you to think of your own obsession with the online world, or lack of it. This is an interesting video on YouTube, by the way, which shows the symbolism in getting caught up in online followers and neglecting your own life and personal relationships. A little creepy, but confronting. www.youtube.com/watch?v=UKFTOH54INU. 17. Don't shame them. Narcissists are very sensitive to shaming. They may have been shamed or guilt-tripped in their childhood, and they will avoid being embarrassed, shamed, or guilty of anything by making excuses, blaming, or smooth talking. Moreover, if you shame a narcissist, he or she might want revenge and will actively seek out ways to make your life harder. Someone said, they will make you pay big time. So, be careful with that. When a narcissist does something wrong, be extremely cautious of the setting and the words you use. 18. Nature or nurture? Although some researchers tend to believe that there might be a genetic component to narcissism, thus underestimating the effects of consistent patterns and the early years of a human life, the truth is that most narcissists are created. A narcissist's insecurity and fragile ego go way back to their childhood. How they turn out is almost always a result of the parenting, or lack of it. They get emotionally damaged a lot when they are young, and although some individuals born into this world may come with a brain with stronger tendencies to it, one can easily see that more than 99% of their misbehavior could have been prevented by a loving couple that takes care of them. 19. Competitive nature. Although it is okay for people to have a competitive nature, which often results into better success, a narcissist desperately wants to feel superior than others around him or her. They don't feel like they are ever good enough, and they become jealous easily when they see that something has something they lack. They want to be better than you, and they will hate you if you think they are not. This way, you could say they are overly competitive. It makes sense while they feel this way. Their parents probably didn't make them feel like they were good enough, so they are always trying to prove themselves and receive praise from others. 20. Too much responsibility as a kid. Studies have pointed to the fact that children with too many big responsibilities in their childhood have a higher chance of developing narcissistic attributes. This could include practical things like babysitting siblings too much, providing, or emotional burdens, such as having to fulfill the emotional needs of a demanding or immature parent. The result of such heavy responsibilities is that they often try too hard, always seeking approval and never allowing themselves to be just the way they are. They feel a frequent need to be the center of attention. In this way, tough tasks for a kid who is too young can contribute to creating a narcissist. 21. Grandiose thinkers. A lack of attention and a desperate need for love and admiration, things a narcissist didn't receive enough in his or her childhood, result into the need to feel a deep hole inside themselves. Narcissists feel to a degree empty inside. Therefore, they always think big to fill in the gap. They like to be in higher circles or be involved in significant projects. This is the reason why some narcissists get very far in politics, business, or other grand venues. 22. Sense of entitlement. I briefly mentioned it before, but I think this is a separate point of discussion. Narcissists have a gigantic sense of entitlement because they look at themselves as being more important than others. They believe that they deserve to have what they want, sometimes without consideration for needs and desires of others. This sense of entitlement has been blown out of proportion during the years and can result into signs and behavior like complaining, impatience, jealousy, crossing boundaries, a lack of empathy, drawing attention to themselves, failure to acknowledge the success of others, tantrums, unworthy thoughts, defensiveness. 23. Boundaries. Speaking of boundaries, when dealing with narcissists, you must set boundaries. Just like with the more extreme version, or cousin disorder, borderline personality disorder, those who have narcissistic personality disorder will step on your boundaries, and they will keep going until you set the boundaries and make them stop. They can cross every boundary you have, leaving you frustrated and damaged. 24. 2 ways to create a narcissist. As a parent, there are 2 ways to create a narcissist. 1. Neglecting a child and denying him or her unconditional love. Not giving them enough love can make them feel uncomfortable with it and create an emptiness they will always try to fill. 2. Overindulge and spoil by overpraising, underdisciplining, or giving them the feeling they are more special than others. When you look at these 2 extremes, it can be concluded that parents should take a good look at where they balance the attention, the gifts, and the praise. Balance is essential to anyone's healthy development to adulthood, and I have great respect for those parents who find themselves being close to that equator and instill balance into their children's hearts. 25. Affirm the relationship first. Be careful when you confront a narcissist. They don't want to be blamed for anything because it hurts their ego. The best way to approach them, if you want them to do something better, is to use empathic validation. This means that you tell them first how much you care about them and what you appreciate about them. If you go straight to the accusation, they will become defensive. One could argue that most people respond better to a careful approach like that anyway, but it is even more true when you are dealing with a narcissist. An example: "You don't listen to me when I talk to you" is too fast and too forward. Better would be, "I care about you a lot, so when you don't listen to me, I feel hurt. Could you work on that?" 26. Meaningful consequences. If the consequences are bad enough, narcissists will change their behavior or they will avoid deviating from their current behavior. For example, if the narcissist knows that cheating on his or her spouse will break the relationship, this is enough motivation to stay faithful. If lashing out against their kids will cause their kids to run away from them, it may be enough for them to control their anger. If the result of evading taxes could possibly cause them to go to jail, they may see the benefit of filing on honest taxes. It's like this for everyone, but for narcissists, it may be even more true, since they are often interested to benefit themselves. Direct consequences that will hurt them are necessary, so that they will behave. 27. You are always wrong. No matter what they say, the narcissist will always claim that you are wrong. Facts can be changed. What really happened doesn't matter. Narcissists will exaggerate, change reality, negotiate, or retell the story as it suits them. They will lie or tell things in such a way that it creates a deceiving impression of how things really are. The truth can, even in a courtroom, be misrepresented in front of an intelligent person. Blurred lines and fictional additions are typical for narcissists when they cover up the truth to justify their behavior. 28. Tantrums. Not everyone who throws a tantrum is a narcissist, but all narcissists throw tantrums. If you have never seen him or her throw a tantrum, it is probably because it happened behind closed doors to appear mature. No matter how intelligent and influential they are, they must be considered as emotional toddlers. They are just putting on a show. Pick your battles and decide whether or not you tolerate such a behavior. Above all, please don't take them seriously. They cannot help it, because they have never learned to deal with frustration or disappointments. Their emotional level doesn't allow them to. And although their brains have cognitively developed to that of an intelligent adult, they lack the emotional maturity of such a person. 29. They do not love you. The narcissist doesn't care. He or she doesn't love you, no matter what narcissists say or claim, or how much they may even guilt trip you with it. They cannot love you. They don't understand what love is, because they never received enough of it themselves. When you do something they approve of course, they will say it and reinforce that behavior. They might say they are concerned or they are worried about you. But a lot of times, this just means that they notice you are no longer doing what they want. Narcissists love you, or what you do when you boost their egos, or fulfill their needs. You are a pawn, a supply of the necessary emotional drug. A cocaine addict will also tell you he or she loves you when you provide him or her with the desired drugs. But it's not real love. The moment you stop providing and the supply runs out, that person will stop loving you. A common complaint of a narcissist is, "Why are you treating me this way after everything I've done for you?" 30. You are an agenda. Narcissists don't see you as an individual. You are part of their agenda and can be exploited as such. You are a part of their world. Nothing more. They are not interested in your opinion, your interests, or your preferences. When they pretend that they are simply putting up a face to get something out of you. You are a reflection of them, a part of their plan to fulfill their needs. This also means that they will not tolerate you if you differ from them in a way they don't understand. Racism, sexism, and or other prejudgments or ways to discriminate are common among narcissists. 31. Criticism. Because their high self-esteem is not real, they have a hard time taking criticism. Narcissists react strongly to anything they interpret or assume as being negative towards their personality or their performance. When you ask a narcissist a question that could reveal vulnerability, deficiency, inadequacy, or culpability, they usually use one of the following strategies. 1. Falsify the evidence. 2. Quickly change the subject or evade the question. 3. Respond as if they have been asked something different. 4. Become defensive or accusing. This aspect of narcissism underlines the fact that their inflated ego is actually an unstable and vulnerable part of their character, not a true self-confidence. They can dish it out, but they cannot take anything coming at them. 32. They are charming. I briefly mentioned this before, but let me say it again. You will be charmed by the narcissist. You could fall for their humor, generosity, status, artificial warmth, or anything similar. They are nice people when they want to be. Secretly, and perhaps unconsciously, they may realize that if they aren't kind to others, they receive no kindness from them. So, they know how to fulfill their emotional needs by feeling that in others and getting it back. 33. Dreams. Fantasies of a narcissist normally include grandiose achievements, recognition, fame, and adoration. Their sense of self-importance exceeds that of the average civilian on the streets. What they would want more than anything is to be seen as someone who is powerful, influential, brilliant, knowledgeable, beautiful, successful, or talented. In a way, we all love the positive attention from others when we have success, look good, or achieve something impressive. We all like to be praised and complimented. This is normal. But to a narcissist, this is the ultimate dream. It's more important than many other aspects in life. This can lead to more success, of course, but it can also diminish their consideration for others. 34. Hard time apologizing. The difference between a narcissist and a regular, mean person is that the last will often show remorse for his or her misbehavior and will admit to having to do better. They have the ability to apologize and see things from the other person's perspective. A narcissist lacks empathy anyway, and will do anything to avoid blame or weakness. They simply do not want to lower themselves to a position where they did something wrong, and their personality is being seen as anything less than super powerful, flawless, or brilliant. Moreover, they always want to be right. If they are wrong, they think others see them as weak. Vulnerability scares them, so they would rather talk until the other person sees that they are right. At the same time, those who have narcissistic traits but aren't considered to be diagnosed with a severe disorder in that sense can learn throughout their lives to apologize more often. In their cases, the process may take longer because it hurts their self-image, and therefore it's more difficult to them. 35. Self-righteous. Narcissists can be inordinately self-righteous, which sometimes means that they are more defensive than others too. They need enough to protect their ego. Just like they are highly reactive to criticism, they often feel it is an immediate threat if someone questions their competence. Many people who are related to or work with narcissists have reported how difficult it is to get through to them in situations of conflict. It is as if their very survival depends on being right or not being the guilty one, which also leads to having a hard time apologizing, as mentioned earlier, or admitting to a mistake. It's difficult or almost impossible to admit that they did something wrong, because they automatically conclude that there is something wrong with them. The truth hurts, and they cannot take it because their real self-esteem is too low to accept that reality. Faking self-confidence is a survival technique of the mind. 36. They can rage. Not everyone who rages is a narcissist, and not every narcissist rage. But a typical narcissist is more prone to anger or rage when his or her point of view is being contradicted. It is so common that some psychologists have wondered if it should be numbered as one of the criteria for the disorder. Angry outbursts are, therefore, typical to both those who have the lighter and different form of narcissistic personality disorder, and also those who have the more severe and psychopathic form of borderline personality disorder. The biggest difference usually lies in the fact that those who have borderline disorder rage when they fear abandonment. With narcissists, this is not the case, although both disorders react with heated emotion when people around them reveal their deepest, most hidden insecurities and self-doubts. 37. Projection. Something else that narcissists may do is to project the traits, flaws, and behaviors of themselves onto others. It's always about those qualities they see in themselves, but they can't or won't accept them in themselves because they despise them. How they want to be is more important than how or who they are, because of their low self-image. Therefore, they often criticize in others what they want to get better at themselves. They feel compelled from within to conceal deficits or weaknesses in their own character. So, they redirect unfavorable appraisal outwards, unconsciously trusting in the fact that doing so will keep their suspicions about themselves in the dark. Since their emotional resources are underdeveloped, it can be scary to them, being forced to confront the darkness at their innermost core. Very few of them achieve such interior knowledge, as many of the true narcissists, depending on where they are at in the spectrum, deny self-insights and avoid confrontations that acknowledge their flaws as being attributed to such a disorder or such tendencies. In many ways, their unyielding defenses can be viewed as more or less defining their entire, deeper personality. This is the reason why one of the most reliable ways for them to feel good about themselves and safe in the world they are at best so alienated from is to invalidate, devalue, or denigrate others. They focus on the flaws of people around them, whether or not they really exist, rather than acknowledge and come to terms with their own. Sadly, this is a coping pattern that is difficult to break through. 38. Admiration. Since they didn't receive it enough in their childhood, most likely, they need constant adoration and praise. If they are not capable of getting that, they can collapse from within. This is how PDM describes it. The characteristic subjective experience of narcissistic individuals is a sense of inner emptiness and meaninglessness that requires recurrent infusions of external confirmation of their importance and value. When the environment fails to provide such evidence, narcissistic individuals feel depressed, ashamed, and envious of those who succeed in attaining the supplies that they lack. As stated earlier, they often lack the necessary motivation in their childhood and got constant negative feedback. It could be that the standards their parents imposed on them were unrealistically high, or that status and results were emphasized too much and their competence not enough. Their high ego is an illusion, a mirror they hold in front of themselves to keep themselves from being hurt or influenced by more detrimental messages. The parents may not have realized how much their words could wound their children, even after their childhood. This so-called narcissistic injury causes many narcissists to objectify others. By using derogative objectivation and criticizing others, they try to decrease their own perceived vulnerability and any power others may have over them. Since narcissists have learned through the experiences in their childhood that you cannot trust people, the result of the emotional pain inflicted on them by insufficiently caring, non-approving parents, and therefore they won't accept the risks associated with allowing another to see their weaknesses. When they feel safe enough in the context of an intimate relationship, they need to keep their partner at a distance because they don't want to risk getting hurt emotionally. True intimacy, for this reason, is for some narcissists out of reach. By refusing or being unable to open up their hearts to other people, they keep themselves from receiving what they want the most and actually have a need for. "39. Vulnerability. Just like a narcissist doesn't want to be vulnerable or perceived as weak, they will project that on others to make themselves appear to be more powerful, strong, or balanced. If you are married to a narcissistic partner, he or she may have called you overly sensitive, weak, needy, stupid, or something else when you contradicted what he or she said. Humiliation can be used to make themselves look bigger or more important. In turn, he or she might not share any of their worst fears or weaknesses. Don't let them belittle, humiliate, or talk down on you. 40. Treatability. Just as always, diagnosing mental disorders is that once you pin someone with a label, you tend to fix that person in time and space. Labels are typically both reductive and absolutists. You could even claim, rightfully or not, that everything that is considered to be human is relative and changeable. Some people's psychopathology is curable indeed, and there have been cases of severe autism, brain damage, or other complex matters that have shown a healing over time. Like all other mental or emotional disorders, there are degrees of narcissism. One narcissist may not react the same way as another, and one narcissist may be completely psychotic, apathic, and dangerous, while another just has some simple self-esteem issues and reacts with more irritability when criticized. Nothing more. Therefore, how treatable an individual is largely depends on the degree of this disturbance in his or her mind. Some are more treatable than others, since some are less damaged than others. When therapists are faced with narcissists, it is always the most difficult thing that the patients have a hard time acknowledging their own flaws. Self-denial doesn't work in their favor, and self-reflection can be a longer process than the average person with this disorder. A good therapist re-emphasizes their safety and worth, and then slowly and carefully responds them with points of improvement. It is often their partners who contact therapists out of desperation or a lack of satisfaction. Since their partners' reactions are often defensive, they can't get through to them and require a third party to intervene. Many narcissists are on the low end of the spectrum, and it mostly depends on what happened to them in life or in their childhood, how severe they suffer from narcissistic tendencies. Loving themselves, really loving themselves, lies at the core of their cure. With their low self-esteem and their denial, this can be hard to achieve, but breakthroughs have been recorded in the past. So, these should definitely not be ruled out. The layer of self-protective arrogance needs to be removed, and having them see the good in others, or having them to see that they don't have to be better than everyone else to be valued, are parts of this as well. 41. Voicing two things. I briefly touched on reaffirming the relationship. To have a narcissist react the right way, you need to prompt empathy, which includes two main components: voicing the importance of the relationship and revealing your own feelings. 1. This will be something like, "You matter a lot to me," or "I care a lot about you." Many narcissists don't even realize that they have been missing these reassurances. They haven't heard them enough in their childhood, but they may be open to whatever you have to say after stating them. Try to avoid words that indicate a distance. Use a lot of we and not you when pointing something out. 2. Reveal your own feelings. We never get angry or pull away unless we are in emotional pain. Describe what you feel without blaming your partner. This exercise is especially good for a narcissist to do. Keep digging why you feel hurt, lonely, worthless, or inadequate. 42. Therapy and progress. The best way to determine if there is still hope in the relationship is to see progress in having them tolerate intimate sharing of confused or hurt feelings, and show that they are somewhat empathetically moved by your intrinsic pain. And if they can comfort you and readily admit that they aren't so perfect themselves and openly display some of their feelings, then you know there is light at the end of the tunnel. If they are willing to engage in couples therapy, this is another sign. Many narcissists avoid couples treatment because such practices will expose their weaknesses, feelings, or fears. They have learned to protect themselves against this and subdue all feelings, or at least pretend they do. Most times, change is gradual with a number of setbacks. Your partner's self-absorption and extreme sensitivity to being put down or talked to can quickly resurface when they ignored, belittled, disrespect, or threatened. Change is possible, however, with a big portions of patience. You can both progress at your own level. 43. Recognize annoyances. Narcissists can be antagonistic or get under your skin. If a narcissist is always trying to put himself or herself in the spotlight, interrupting you or drawing attention away from you, then you need to acknowledge that annoyance and put a halt to it. I think the best example of this is in the movie Big Eyes. I recommend it. 44. Keep their background in mind. Sometimes you may feel extremely frustrated with or disappointed in a narcissist's behavior. At those moments, try not to condemn them, but understand where it is coming from. They cannot always help themselves, and the question may be how accountable for their actions they really are. You can help them focus on what needs to be done by giving enough reassurances without comparing. Remarks such as, "I am proud of you," or "You have made progress," are better than, "Look how much better you are doing than everyone else," or "Nobody can do what you do." They need to feel good about themselves without comparing themselves to others. The element of competition would only reinforce their fake arrogance. 45. It is not black and white. Narcissism is not an all-or-nothing personality trait. In some circumstances, their insecurities may come out more than others. It is not all about their childhood either. When someone gets turned down, rejected, belittled, bullied, or in some other way negatively influenced in life, his or her narcissistic tendencies can worsen. Everyone has this in them. Everyone is in one way or another sensitive to negative reinforcements about their self-image. When someone doesn't get promoted, gets dumped by their girlfriend, gets abused by a spouse, or gets confronted with some other trauma, when others have taken advantage of that person, narcissistic traits may have developed, depending on how that person will deal with the situation. 46. Kiss up or shut up. You may be with a narcissist, like your boss, in a relationship. Perhaps not an intimate one, but just in their environment. Sometimes you have to face the facts. You need to be somewhat of a brown noser to save yourself. If they are in a more powerful position, you will just have to cooperate and not think of life as being fair. Who said it ever was? If you cannot do that, then don't say anything. You cannot fight the big boys. I've had enough frustrations with guards at airports, Amazon as a business, security patrol, authorities, cops, teachers, bureaucrats, and many more, where I couldn't do anything about it. Sure, they weren't all narcissists, but my point is that I was treated unfairly by them, and there was nothing I could do against it. If I would have complained, my situation would have become worse. And sometimes, you'll just have to swallow your pride, take it, and accept that is just how life is. You may be right. They may be evil or corrupt. They may be dishonest. They may have stolen from you, treated you like dirt, or been rude when they should had good manners. It doesn't matter. Get over it. 47. What they want. A narcissist can make false promises. Keep that in mind. They may come with ideas with possibilities and more, but if they get what they want, they often forget about it. Perhaps they didn't even intend to keep their promises. Sometimes it's best to remember not to give them what they want until they give you what they promised. Don't pay the taxi driver until he or she has dropped you off at your agreed destination. Narcissists will even respect you for doing this. To them, it's a deal, not a question of actual feelings and relationships. They will rarely be offended if people are looking out for themselves, because this is often what they do. Therefore, they expect it from others too. Sometimes you need to negotiate hard and show no mercy, because if you do, they might take advantage of you. This all sounds very negative, but it's actually not that bad. Power struggles are a daily reality, and everyone wants something. A narcissist may just insist more on getting his or her part of the deal than others. You can work with them if you give them what they want. One way to work with a narcissist is to set up situations where acts of kindness or charity have a direct consequence of admiration and success. In other words, they need to see that their narcissistic needs will be met if they act like decent, caring individuals. It's a negotiation process. 48. Try to feel their pain. Whenever you feel annoyed by a narcissist, try to keep in mind how they are constantly trying to protect their ego. If the slightest damage or indication of low self-worth is made, they accept such a depressing notion and do whatever they can to deny it. They cannot accept that they make mistakes, are just like everyone else, or treat others as equals. They never have been treated equally themselves. If you try to feel how miserable they secretly are, you will be less condemning when they mess up and justify it. 49. No guilt, just shame. Narcissists don't feel guilty. They don't care as much about their conscience. Their apathy towards others have been forced on them since childhood, and therefore, their empathy has severely damaged. They don't care as much if they hurt others. They do care if that causes others to dislike them. They care about their face, their image, the way others look at them. This is why, when correcting a narcissist, it's useless to ask the rhetorical question. How do you think this action makes the other person feel? Or, do you think it's the right thing to do? They will justify it anyway. The right question to ask them is, what would other people think of you? This will cut them through the core, because their appearance, their reputation, this is all that matters. If you pose a latter question, they will think twice about what they will do. Narcissists aren't stupid. They just don't consider other people's feelings as much. So, don't emphasize others' reaction, but their perception of the narcissist. Also, narcissists are more likely to act on ideas that they think they thought of themselves. So if you want them to do something, do not give suggestion, but ask questions that could lead a narcissist to come up with the same idea you had in mind, without knowing that you were hinting to it in the first place. This makes a lot of sense, since acting on your idea will give them the feeling that they are inferior by following your suggestions. But when they think that they thought of it themselves, they feel proud of it. I think one of the best examples of this is the scene in the movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, the first one, where the women try to get the father's approval and re-emphasize that they have to make him think it is his idea. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's hilarious. 50. Find balance. When narcissists try to draw all attention to themselves, don't get derailed. Don't lose your own sense of purpose or your own mission in life. You don't need to do everything they say, and at times, you must distance yourself from them because your mind is different. Find the balance between moving on with your own things and alleviating the vulnerable narcissist's anxieties and insecurities. This has been Narcissist: 50 Things to Know About a Narcissistic Personality Disorder. Written by Albert Rogers. Narrated by Matthias Job Gombusch. Copyright 2017 by Albert Rogers. Production copyright 2017 by Albert Rogers.